Geek Tank Radio, News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. Today's episode of Geek Tank Radio is brought to you by the Humane Society's new catch and release traps for rodents of unusual size. It's kind of a catch-22, Allan. I mean, it's great to, not have to stab them with a sword, but letting them out is not the fun part. I'll let you do that. So.
Well, it's not so much the ROSs as you have to drag them back to the edge of the fire swamp.
Yeah.
And that can be a little dicey.
Yeah, being humanitarian has its downfall. Anyway, welcome to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max behind the glass. And guys, we're kind of calling an audible. We had all of our exhaustive show prep laid out. Don't roll your eyes,
do
Brandon.
anything.
we had our best laid plans, and then we had an opportunity to have our good buddy Craig Brewer independent filmmaker, director, writer, drop by, and we said, well, okay, we're changing our plans. But Craig, hey, it's good to have you on Geek Tank Radio, man.
Thank you for having me.
Have you been on the air with us before? I know we've known you for quite a while, but
I don't know. I don't
we haven't.
I don't think we've done an episode with you.
Yeah, I've just been to, conventions and
we met Craig. Actually, Craig, we met you. It was sort of a chance meeting. Do you want to tell them how we met? What the filmmaking workshop that you did with your son?
Oh yeah, was that the Indie Memphis Youth Festival? That was over at the Kroc Center.
Kroc Center. Yeah. So I'll just tell. So basically, you guys, I'm one of the things we were known for is our educational outreach with the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention. Also working in shameless plugs anytime we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But so we were getting to the end of the week because we did a week-long filmmaking workshop, and we shot little films with the students and everything. And then it came time to screen them on the last day, and we invited all the parents to show up. And I'm up on stage, and I go, that guy looks like Craig Brewer. I wonder what he's doing here. How did he hear about our workshop?
I was scouting for talent.
Yeah, and you were pretty. You were moved. You said by the experience.
No, it was great. It was really good for my son, and I'm always a big believer that like making movies is something that I think that people sometimes confused that it's like a privilege thing that you got to like have a lot of money and you've got to have like influence, but I wish it was treated more like more people could just do it for fun, and especially with younger people, especially nowadays with everybody having like basically so much more than I ever had with my first film in their phone.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they really, they could make a movie, they could cut a movie, they could screen a movie, all from their pocket and even advertise their movie, and so it was just really great to, see my son get involved. And, I was a guy that could never really get into sports, and so I went into like children's theater. And so I think that, when you see young people making movies, it's a special thing.
Yeah, it's cool. And we really stress that too, just using simple tools. Because I think back in the day, I could understand when you had to buy an expensive camera and all the gear, but nowadays, like you say, you can edit it on your laptop, you can shoot it on your phone, and it's all about telling a good story. Though.
What's this needing a laptop? Most tablets come with editing software built in.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, but that's really the key though, because I think that I know a lot of people. Here's whenever I get nervous when a filmmaker comes up to me and they're like, "You got to see my movie. We shot it on the Red." And if you know what this is, the Red is like this camera that everybody Fincher shoots on it and everything like that. But I always go like, oof, I'm already suspect, because if you're leading with like the fact that you shot it with an expensive camera, that means that you're compensating for the fact that it may not have a good story.
See, Craig, this is one of the reasons we love you. And if you're not familiar with Craig, if you've seen the movie Hustle and Flow, Tarzan, that Dolomite movie with Eddie Murphy was cool.
And then keep going. He's got a few more.
And Dolomite is my name. And Nashville, you've worked on the show, even though we have our.
No, I didn't work on Nashville. I worked on Empire.
I'm sorry, but you were in Nashville all the time. I kept mixing that up.
Yeah, I've been to a festival or two in Nashville.
Yeah. However, Craig, you have a very one thing, because I've seen you're always giving back to Memphis, and you're always encouraging young filmmakers, which I appreciate. I've been to some of the film festivals where you've done special workshops with the young people, And at the top, if you wanted to create a pyramid, at the very top of the peak is story. Every other tool and every other device is all about moving the story forward. It's not about what camera you used, right?
Right, right. Yeah, I would say that's it's the hardest thing to crack. It really is. I mean, because it's so simple.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't mean simple like it's easy. I mean simple that it's hard. And I can always tell, you know, there's a rocket fuel that I think young, you know, movie lovers have, which is like, well, I could do that. Or like they'll watch some action movie and it's like, well, that was just some stupid mindless action movie. And I'll sometimes say like, yeah, but you know, I've tried to like actually sit down and just write a mindless action movie, and they're hard.
Yeah.
You know, they're hard to do, and you know, the difference is somebody sat down and did it, and you know, you didn't. And you know, and that's why you're sitting here complaining about it. And so I think that, you know, I've developed techniques where I can kind of like try to crack story by watching stories and watching movies.
Well, you've got a very interesting principle about that. And so, Craig, I should have led with this. I talk about burying the lead. One of the reasons
you are good at that.
One of the reasons we wanted to have you on, and we're going to get into all of this, how you look at creating stories and all that. But there's something new that you were telling me about that you're doing over at the Crosstown Theatre, and we want people to show up for this. So let's start with that and let people know what you're up to, man.
Yeah, it's something that I've done. I did one about a month and a half ago, and I do it like every other month. But it's called the Secret Screening, and it's at the Crosstown Theatre. And I pick a movie. It's not one of my movies, but it's a movie that's probably going to be a crowd pleasing, interesting movie. I just don't tell you what it is. And so everybody shows up. I got like a DJ. I bring out like a surprise special guest, and I usually just kind of talk to them about something, whether it be about their life or what they're doing, but it has to do with the movie that I'm about to show.
So everything's a clue.
Yeah, I don't even introduce the movie. And it's a very slick produced event. We have music cues and lighting cues, and it's aimed to just kind of like set up watching a movie perhaps with like a different context, and also the fact that nobody knows what they're about to see. And it may be that you've seen the movie like a long time ago or maybe never at all. But the last one was just such a hit, you know. I mean, like the audience just really left exhilarated, and it was not your normal, hey, we're going to watch a movie and here's what it is. They gave it a shot, and I felt that a lot of my movies kind of have benefited from that. I mean, like I remember pitching Hustle and Flow,
right, and
people really being against it, and I was like, I know this sounds crazy, but I guarantee you're going to care about this pimp who wants to rap, and
yeah,
people be like, I don't really want to get to know a guy like that, and I don't really like rap music. Why would I like that? But you know, you start watching a movie and you get it set up a certain way, and people are like, you know, I didn't think that I would enjoy that, or I didn't think that I would care about that guy, but now I'm invested, and so I think that's just kind of like the fun thing that I wanted to do with Crosstown Arts, and you know, and try to have a fun evening.
A few weeks ago, Craig, we were talking about the Red Hot Chili Peppers song "Under the Bridge," right? You know, and I went down this rabbit hole where I found out actually what the song, what the context was when they wrote the song, and I'm like, that's a really interesting story. And suddenly, all I wanted to do was listen to that song, and I feel like it's similar. What you're setting up,
I don't know if you
giving
remember.
us some backstory.
Remember back in the day when Clapton's is it what's the song In Heaven? Tears in Heaven.
Oh, that's
so that movie
song.
came out. I mean, that song came out and was like, it went away, and then he did an interview where he talked about that it was about his son who his toddler who had fallen off a balcony and was killed, and that he wrote that song about that, and then it went, you know, it became like huge because now people had this context of loss with it,
right?
And so it was played at funerals. It was played, like, people had a whole new connection to the song that they didn't have before.
Yeah, and so that's sort of the principle here, right? So.
Yeah, and it's fun. Like it's the screening is something that, like, you know, we're seeing, you know, everybody's kind of hanging out in the same space for, like, you know, as people are sitting down and hanging out, and then a show starts.
Yeah, you know, Craig, I have to admit, you know, because I think I met you in 2013, And you know, anytime you're in town, I know you're always great about dropping by the convention too, and bringing your family and everything, which we because but at first I felt really special. I'm like, gosh, Craig Brewer is going to our convention. Gosh, Craig Brewer called me about this such and such, and then I found out if you live in Memphis, he kind of is friendly. You're sort of there for everybody. I have to admit, you know,
but that's just more of a Memphis state of mind.
I think
it is a Memphis thing. We've talked many times amongst ourselves, right, Allan, about how all you need, if you've got a creative idea in Memphis, put it out there. People will come in droves to work with you.
Absolutely. And what I have a like every time I will always go to like the official premiere of like one of my movies in wherever the studio is having it. But on the day that it really launches, I'm always at the same theater. I go to Studio on the Square, and they always play it in I think it's like the number 1 or number 2 theater, where all my movies have played, like even the movie I made for $20,000 back in the day. And it's because there's never this judgment or expectation on anything. People are actually just coming to watch a movie and have a good time or enjoy it, and no one is like looking at the sales across all markets and there's none of that. And I would say that, like, I remember when I would make movies and show them at like the old Hightone, like just on a screen where like they're selling drinks, and you know, where everybody's like, "This is a great movie, but you know, bring on the burlesque dancers that you promised," you know, and that was glorious, you know. But then again, like, I'm also watching like local artists like, you know, the Bolivians and you know, Amy Levere, all these people that like are here, and I never felt, even though my movies have become much broader, and you know, I mean, I as soon as like Coming to America finished shooting, I couldn't wait to just get back home, and it was great that actually the premiere of all of that happened. You know, I could watch it at home, you know, and on Amazon Prime, and just be around my family and my friends.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing about Memphis is it's comforting.
Yeah.
You know, we've all got our favorite restaurants. We've all got our favorite hangouts. We got our favorite little spots that we go to, or, you know, if you got kids, you probably go by the zoo, and you got, you know, we just have this pattern in Memphis.
Yeah.
That is very comfortable. And the other thing, especially for, I'll pick on Brandon for a second, because he and I get into all kinds of projects together. We got such an amazing talent base here that no matter what it is, Joe's, you know, called and said, you know, we're putting together 4,000 Legos. Well, let me make a couple of calls, and you know, next thing you know,
you got the
you got all these people showed up going like, Legos? We got Legos? Let's go. Welcome to pretty much any project. If you one complaint I've heard of Memphis over the years is, well, there's really nothing to do. And my favorite response to that is, only if you try not to do anything.
Right.
This is a vibrant city.
Well, I even had a friend move to Memphis because he wanted to do what had happened to me, meaning like he wanted to make movies in Memphis, and then eventually, like, you know, what happened with Hustle and Flow and everything else.
Right.
And I was like, and it wasn't really working for him. And I said, well, I think that the problem is that you're trying to be famous, and that's not really what I was doing. I was just trying to make a movie that was going to be playing at the local bar, and I wanted to be good. And there's a lot of people here that just have the expectation of just wanting to be good, and they're not really thinking about fame. And then if some success comes, then that's great. But you know, even with our basketball team and everything, like, there's something really great. And I truly mean this, about like, we're never number one. We're kind of second, but that's actually a really great place to be. I know I'm not making sense with it, but it's like,
you're making total sense.
It's like we're that group that is always like, why is this not going to go away? Are they not going to, like?
You know what? We were here last year. We're going to be here next year.
Right.
We're going to push your team to the absolute breaking point every time we see you.
You've got
welcome to Memphis.
You've got those guys out there. It's like, I'm going to do this, and this person's going to see it, and I'm going to get rich, and I'm going to get famous. Memphis, in general, we're just like, we do it for the love of the game.
Right. Absolutely.
Craig, you totally triggered me, and I'm sure you guys know why. So you said something that I just really love, and I want to get on my soapbox. You create art because you're driven to do it. You create, if you're a painter or if you're somebody that does any type of art, it's because you feel like your life isn't complete and you're compelled to do it. If you go out there and go, I want to do this because I want to make a lot of money, or I want people to know who I am and I want to be famous, it's totally backwards. And whether you achieve success or not, if you create honest art, you've accomplished something in your life. So I mean,
well, and to study Memphis, and I do. I read every book there is about music and history books, and I mean, I'm always in that third floor of the Memphis Library and getting old texts and documents and everything like that. Has made me a better filmmaker. I mean, I'll give you a funny moment between me and Eddie Murphy where he did a take, and I went up to him and I was like, "Yeah, it was good, man, but let's do it again. Just take some of the butter off your toast, And then I walk away, and he's like, "What?" and I was like, and he goes, "Butter off the toast?" I go, "Yeah, man, your toast is good without any butter on it, just And so now, what I know is happening there
is awesome.
Is that
I want to use that. I'm stealing that line, Craig.
Well, and then
use it right.
Right, and then Eddie, of course, had fun with it. I came up and he was like, "Does it just need a little more hot sauce? But how about some cloves on this next one? Just give it." And I think what it was is that I think that when I was younger, I would come up to actors or to technicians or everybody, and I would just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and I would literally try to get to the specificity of exactly what I think that they should be doing. But if you listen to Sam Phillips talk to Jerry Lee or to Elvis over at Sun Studios in those early recordings, he'd just say things like, "Hey, on that solo, don't get so complicated, just and what that allows is the artist to interpret the simplicity of what you're asking them to do, and then they're not thinking about what they should do; they're thinking about what they could do."
Right.
And also to feel safe and comfortable with. And so that's kind of that. When people have talked to me about how did you kind of come up with this directing style and everything, I was like, really, it's just kind of I would say the College of Memphis, not necessarily the University of Memphis, but just if you come to Memphis and you really just allow yourself to be steeped in its culture and also everything that's come. I mean, if you think about it, I and not to get on my soapbox on this, but
step on up.
Yeah, get up there, man.
Isaac Hayes being at Stax while Soulfinger is being recorded, and Isaac isn't even singing on it, but he's in charge of the horn section. He's helping as the and just going outside and seeing a bunch of kids and going "Hey kids, come on in here," and I'm going to give you a bunch of sodas, and when I point to you, shout Soulfinger.
Yeah.
To me, that's a Memphis way of making art or making music, as opposed to being in a major market and then saying what can we do to achieve this kind of authenticity, as opposed to it just being outside.
And making that sort of part of the process, allowing for improvisation and allowing for, it's not, you're not micromanaging, you're not writing every single detail down. You're allowing for spontaneity.
Right.
Well, a lot of times personal interpretation might not go the direction you wanted it to go, and you just like where it went.
Right. Yeah. And it's always been great. One of the best parts of Hustle and Flow is this guy named Claude who gives DJ his keyboard at the beginning of the movie, and this cat just walked in off the street, and we had all these actors that were through the agency come in, and he just said, "Hey man, let me just try to sell you something," and he just started coming up with different things to say, and I've put him in every one of my movies. He was in Dolomite Is My Name, and it's because he's just straight up authentic Memphis hustling, and he just was. I was like, even Eddie on the last movie, he played like a bum in Dolomite Is My Name, and Eddie was like, how does this guy just seem so comfortable in front of the camera? I was like, because it's just how he is. You know?
Yeah. It's cool. You've developed a lot of. Well, I don't know if you've developed. I feel like you've almost not gotten in your own way when it comes to the way you've evolved as a storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm always trying to be better, of course, but it's been sometimes the best things that have happened is me letting go.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this is interesting. It's great having Craig on the Geek Tank Radio. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to dive deeper into some of his movie-making techniques.
Geek Tank Radio. News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
That's what Max sounded like. He was really upset about the controls. They're giving him trouble this morning. I don't know. Anyway, welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody.
He's working hard to keep us on the air, but after last week, he had such a laid back week last week.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun being at the
this
dog.
This is karma getting back at him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Friday the 13th, Saturday the 14th was last week, so it's caught up to him finally. So that's all right.
Hey guys, so I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max behind the glass, and our special guest, a friend of ours, Craig Brewer, independent filmmaker, producer, writer, director, kind of just you make art and film is your game, right? I mean,
I guess that sounds pretty good.
I mean, you still do get to claim independent filmmaker even after doing Coming to America, right?
I don't know if I can anymore. I don't. I think
Tarzan.
it's cool.
I
didn't direct Tarzan. I wrote it.
He wrote Tarzan.
Yeah. I mean, let me say this. I've only made 2 independent films. Out of everything else has been through a studio system.
So that was The Poor and Hungry and
my first one, and Hustle and Flow, because John Singleton financed Hustle and Flow all himself. He put his house up for collateral.
Wow.
Paid for it himself.
Really?
So really, which is
you must have felt a lot of pressure on that one, huh?
I did, but I was just, I mean, he was like my big brother. I look back at it now, thinking that, I can't believe that he did that, that he put that much risk, into my movie. But now, every time I'm at a Grizzlies game and I see Whoop That Trick, I always wish he passed away a couple of years ago. And so I always wish I could tell him man, we made this thing that just keeps on, entertaining and informs the culture.
Craig, you just gave me a question because, we've seen you around Memphis forever, and you're always at Indie Memphis. You're at some of the youth film festivals, and you're always great about giving out advice, mostly around storytelling for independent filmmakers. But now you're making me wonder: is there any advice you'd give out in terms of just the nuts and bolts business end of it, or just maybe pitfalls to avoid, or something like that? Because
yeah, I mean, I think that I guess it depends on what kind of part you want to go into. Meaning, if you want to, I have a lot of friends or a lot of people that come up to me and say how can I get into the movie business? And there's kind of 2 sets of advice I can give. One is move to a town that the industry is. Go to you can go to Atlanta, you can go to Los Angeles, you can go to New York, or possibly Chicago or something like that, and you can work your way up. But you're never going to work your way up, even under the best of circumstances, to something where someone's going to allow you just to be a voice. You'll probably end up maybe becoming an assistant director, and then one day somebody lets you direct episode 9 of season 8 of something if that works out. The best thing to do is to figure out who you are. And when I stopped trying to just get in the business when I was younger, and I just tried to think, my father had passed away at the age of 49 of a heart attack, and I got $20,000 of inheritance, and he had read this script that I wrote called The Poor and Hungry, and my mom suggested I just make a movie the way my dad suggested I make it, just try to do a crew of 2 and just shoot it with a video camera and a microphone, and really concentrate on the story and the performances, and not so much care about the way it, we shot it on black and white digital video. But I learned who I was. I think the reason why I figured that out was I was going out every day thinking like, well, what if this is the last movie I make? I just want it to be as if I suddenly drop dead like my dad. Like people could look at this movie and go like, oh, I think I see the kind of things he's into. Had a very big blues soundtrack. You know, it was about people who didn't have much and also found love and camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. So you find those things that you go like, oh, well, those are the things that I've always responded to in the movies that I've watched when I was growing up, or the stories that were told to me, and I'm going to try to make a story of my own. And then luckily John Singleton saw that movie and he said, do you have any other scripts? And I said, yeah, I made a sequel to this movie called Hustle and Flow. And then that's how it started happening. But it wasn't like I made it to necessarily, jump into the Hollywood system. You want to find out who you are. And you don't want to do that when someone's giving you a couple of $1 million to do it, because then if you fail on their economic level, then that's not really encouraging for you to figure out who you are.
Yeah, and you're basically you're becoming their voice, right? I like the notion of a storyteller finding their authentic voice, and that's what I'm going to share with the world. You may like it, you may not.
It should be the only thing you're focusing on at the beginning, right. and allow yourself to shoot with such attainable tools that you can do it all yourself, or with good collaborators and friends. But once that money gets involved, like you're on a whole different level of risk.
Right.
And that's something that I think is important to know, because I think that people immediately that's why I always feel like I'm in a good place when people come to me and say like, hey man, I just need some money and I need someone like you to like get behind me. I was like, well, no one was behind me and no one gave me any money.
Right.
So you're asking the wrong person if you really want, some advice.
You got a built-in excuse, man, because I bet people hit you up all the time for
Yeah.
favors.
Yeah.
So.
They're like, what, man? John Singleton gave you all that money for Hustle and Flow. And I was like, well, John Singleton did not give us a lot of money. I'm incredibly grateful for it, but we made Hustle and Flow for under $2 million, shot it in 24 days. Everybody worked for scale. Because nobody else in Hollywood wanted to make it. But that's not my first movie. My first movie, I made for very little. I had to cut it all myself. I had to learn how to light it. Sometimes I would go out and I'd shoot a scene. I'd bring it back. I'd cut it together. I would go like, oh, this sucks. My lighting sucks. So call up the actors. Can we go shoot it again?
Right.
And it's like, okay, I'm going to try noir lighting now. And that's how we learned, and that's how you find out who you are. And I think that if you watch even like Dolomite Is My Name, and look at Hustle and Flow and Poor and Hungry, you go, oh, there's similar themes there. It's like people that maybe don't have a lot. They get like a de facto family together of like misfits and go like, let's make something, and find meaning in it. And that's kind of the thread that I think you can say like that's me finding who I was with no money.
Is this? Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say, you talk about finding yourself, in your filmmaking. How do you've also, I know you've directed episodes of episodic television. You've done Empire. You've done The Shield. You did the pilot to one of my favorite shows, Terriers. Yeah. And I have to ask, when you're going into something where it's not necessarily your voice,
right.
How do you still put your imprint on those episodes?
I don't. And that's what's really wonderful about it. As a matter of fact, I remember like right before I started working on Empire, I had written Tarzan,
right,
and then Tarzan was a project that David Yates went off to direct, and I had two other movies that I had written, and they were just stalling at the studios, and I was kind of lost, and I needed a job, and I remember telling my agents, I was like, you know what I really want to do? I want to work with everything that I know how to do in service to Lee Daniels' vision for this show Empire, where my friends are working on. Right. And I want to, like when and one of the most rewarding experiences was the episode of The Shield I did, because I was such a fan of the show. And so I didn't want to put my own input into it. I was like, this doesn't look like The Shield. Like, hey, can you like make that camera like a little bit more Dutchy, like put it on its angle or something like that? That you're working in service of somebody else's vision, but you're using your craft to do that. And I will say that even though, when Eddie asked me to do Coming to America, I remember going into it going like, okay, obviously I'm a huge fan, but I've never really jumped on a train that had been moving. Like that was a script that had been developed over 5 years. And I was like, okay, guys, I'm gonna. John Landis is like one of my heroes, and we've got to figure out like where this movie is going to land in that John Landis type of humor and music numbers. So even though I will say like it's my film, I felt like I was also just trying to channel what Coming to America has become on television for a lot of generations, for right now, and also just that kind of John Landis, craziness, but still like kind of grounded in some heart,
Okay. Now I've got to veer to the other direction though. Footloose.
Oh yeah.
I know that remakes and all get a lot of. I mean, they get a lot of grief that they really don't deserve.
Right.
And what you did with Footloose, I mean, I love both your version as well as the original, and I don't really hold either of them to a different standard. It was just, it feels like, while familiar territory, a completely new movie.
Well, it's funny because I'm surprised at how many people like really do come up to me and just they're almost embarrassed to say how much they love my Footloose,
right?
And I go, it's okay, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
Well, they're just thinking of Kevin Bacon doing the rage dancing and
which we all love,
which is
what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what's going to be interesting this coming weekend watching Top Gun. Is that like you can take kind of the confection type of movie from the '80s, which I'm a huge fan of '80s films.
Oh yeah.
But then what are you going to do with it? And so for the longest time, I really was like resisting doing Footloose because the studio was like, Craig, we've done a lot for you, and maybe this is the one you could do for us, and it's one of your favorite films from the 80s. And I was driving to a bachelor party in Louisiana, and what's that long bridge that's over all the swamps? It's like it's forever. Like when you're driving to Louisiana from I can't remember. I think it's the longest bridge in America.
Yes,
actually.
we all turned to Allan.
Yeah.
Driven
And how
that
many
route.
times have you driven that? Yeah.
Well, I was on it, and we were heading there, and the studio head had called me saying like, "You've got to do Footloose." And I was like, "I can't do Footloose. I can't get my head around this whole like outlaw dancing thing. It's just kind of I don't see it." And
you're like, I'm from Memphis.
Right.
We don't outlaw dancing.
Right. Yeah. And I had rented a car, and all the bugs like were hitting the windshield and splattering, and I hit the windshield wipers with where the water comes out and washes your windshield. There was no water.
Oh no.
So it smeared bug guts across the window, and now the sun's coming down, and all these semis are going by me, and I can't see.
No.
Yeah, that's not good.
And I begin to like sweat, and then like I land and like shaking at this bachelor party, and of course get drunk, and that night I just suddenly like had this like panic attack of I thought I was going to be like hit by one of these trucks, and I was like, and I just sat up, and I was like, oh, I know how to do Footloose.
Wait.
I've never as a parent, like I was thinking like, man, if I had teenage kids that were doing what I was doing yesterday, I'd come unglued. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I can totally understand. Like when I was younger, I wanted to be Kevin Bacon fighting the man. Now I'm a parent, and I'm like, I don't care what you think you should be doing. You need to be safe. And I kind of got it. It was like, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. We never saw the accident. We never saw the accident in the original Footloose. But I think if you see it, and then you go like, oh, I see why this town got so traumatized. And you don't make it just about outline dancing. It's about like just congregating and outside of parental supervision and all that. Like, how do you like? And I found my way in.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, maybe if I can do that and set it in the South, then.
So, Craig, just so I'm clear, if there was wiper fluid in this rental car, we may not have had Footloose.
There would be no remake of Footloose. There would not be
guts on the windshield was the catalyst.
There would not be
for
my version of Footloose. Somebody else would have done something else. But mine required bug guts on the windshield.
That guy
There
would
was
have
an
probably just done
investment.
it.
It's just such an interesting art is fascinating. Just the way things play out. I mean, that's it's sort of a divine providence. Somebody forgot to put the fluid in the wiper box.
I feel like I'm really just like completely taking over Craig's attention here, but I do have one last thing I want to ask him, and it's because of current genres in filmmaking. Is there any desire in you to do a superhero movie? And if so, who would you want to get free reign to run with?
it's hard because I mean I think I would only really kind of like want to do something in the world of Star Wars. Only because I know it, I love it. I've made it very clear to everybody that works there that I know it and love it, and they're aware of me.
You're hanging out at the front door, like hey,
I was supposed to right before the pandemic. I was supposed to go down to the volume and go to the set and everything like that, and then the pandemic hit. So that was yes, all the death is awful, but that was a really bad day for me.
Now, Craig, we sort of there's street level Star Wars that we would think of like the Mandalorian. Then there's the movie one. Which one are you talking about? Or are you open to anything?
Oh, you mean like would I want to do a movie of Star Wars?
Well, you could do the mini-series, like we got Obi-Wan coming up, or you could do just a feature film.
Oh, I would like to. No,
prefer?
it's kind of like what I was saying with Empire. It's like I mean, I would want to be in service of Star Wars.
Okay.
But I also love the notion that the world of Star Wars is going to be around for a while, and I could go like, okay, well, what can I do with this character or this culture or this time? Like, I would love nothing better than be like, okay, what can I do that is like a Civil War like miniseries that's the Battle of Tanab with Lando Calrissian or something like that. Like, what is something that you can take like something from a history that people refer to in the Star Wars universe and then build that out into something. To me, on a creative level, that is interesting. I don't know if really, from what I've come to learn with Marvel, I mean, DC I think is slightly different, but Marvel, you're in service of Kevin's vision.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what filmmaker comes in and they can all tell me that like, oh no, they're completely able to do whatever they want.
We know that's complete BS.
Well, I mean, I get it. I get.
Yeah.
I mean, but I do think
You're right.
that obviously, like different filmmakers are going to,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going to bring their own thing, but you're still in service of a longer narrative that's being told.
Yeah.
Todd Phillips doing Joker is not that.
Right.
Which is one of my favorite movies ever.
Right. So I feel like DC at least is in a world where they can shake it up a little bit more. But if you really want to like put a gun to my head and say like, damn it, Craig, answer the question.
Yeah.
I just think that no one is doing in development. No one's doing Swamp Thing right.
Oh,
I think
interesting.
Swamp Thing is like a Louisiana movie. It's got to be Southern. It's got to be swampy. It's got to have like Beyonce as a conservationist in like tan short shorts that has like a monstrous vegetable guy next to her. That's like, I think you can tap into the Alan Moore world of that, but still, it's still kind of like much more about just, normal like bayou country folk and something really crazy kind of like come into their swamp.
I would totally buy a ticket to that.
Alan Moore will never work with you on that, right?
Well, Alan Moore's
a
not going to work with
curmudgeon when
anybody.
he doesn't want his
I don't
stuff
think he works
made
with
into
himself.
movies.
So.
Right. So, hey,
Well, he's a wizard now, so.
Yeah.
Hey, Craig, and of course, we'll circle back and make sure we talk about your special secret screening project. But I got a question because when we look at, if you look at a Christopher Nolan film, it's like, okay, that's a Christopher Nolan film. I recognize the lighting, I recognize the texture and everything. And, but everybody seems to have their own look. And is it correct to say that maybe every filmmaker has their own, I don't know what, their own vehicle, like their own approach to filmmaking? You talked about this DVD label approach that you sometimes use for,
Yeah.
Are you the only one? Tell us what that is, because I'm just.
Well, I think what it kind of gets back to like finding yourself. So when someone is coming up, when someone asks me like they've got an idea for something and they don't quite know what to do, I have like kind of two techniques that I use. One is this DVD technique. Well, it's not so much a DVD. I call it the shelf.
Okay.
Okay. So if you've got a movie in your mind that you see in your head, but you don't know all the details of it, right? Try to imagine at least the cover of what the DVD is going to look like, or the old-fashioned VHS box set, right? And then put it on a shelf in your brain with the spine out and the name of your project. But then what are 4 movies that you would also put on that shelf that are in the spirit or theme that you're exploring? So for Hustle and Flow, it was Rocky, Saturday Night Fever, Purple Rain, and The Commitments. And so and like, I've got this movie that I wrote that I'm developing called Mother Trucker, which is like kind of like a Smokey and the Bandit meets Convoy type of thing. So, it's like, so you'd put like Sugarland Express, you'd put like, Smokey and the Bandit,
Right.
it's like you would think about like, but for instance, like Footloose, I had a shelf for Footloose, and on the shelf actually was this movie Ordinary People, which is not a 80s thriller, but it's about, it's a Robert Redford,
Right.
directed film about a family that had a death in the family, that one of the brothers, and how like the family never quite got past it, and which is really a big theme in Footloose. And so you do that, and for people that love movies, you just utilize procrastination to help you. So what I do is I watch these movies, but I watch them with the counter on. So I then stop every 10 minutes and I write down what happened in those 10 minutes. And then I keep going to the next 10 minutes. All right, well, what just happened? And then you start seeing, and I even have a card system. That's the second thing, where it's like, it's basically, I have 2 cork boards, and each cork board has like 30 cards on it, and each card represents 2 pages or 2 minutes of screen time. So if there's 5 across, that's like 10 minutes. So I could literally go like, here's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes on this 1 hour. And then I just go through and I just start, like, I'll watch Rocky and be like, oh, that's interesting. Apollo Creed comes up at around like 8 minutes. Oh, let's see. 6 minutes later, they're announcing the fight. Oh, but he's already met Adrian in the, and so you start seeing things in the other movies that start asking questions about your movie. And then you do that for 4 movies, and then you go like, all right, it's time for me to at least put the things that I know about my movie up on my board.
Almost systematic storytelling, but it I guess it just keeps you in your lane at least, so you don't just get off on a tangent.
Well, yeah, because you
Some
gotta
direction
know
that's
where
gonna
you're
be-
going before you start
Right.
writing, I think.
That's cool. I don't know, man. Well, folks, we want to remind you, if you want to meet Craig, it's a really great opportunity. You're going to be at the Crosstown Theatre next Friday, right? So,
Next Friday, yeah, 7:30 the doors open. The show starts at 8. It's a great movie. I just can't tell you what it is.
okay, we can't pry the information out of you yet. But what's
Are
cool
you going to
is
drop a hint?
It's really exciting, and it does have space involved.
yeah.
All right, so we're
Yes.
going to be geek involved.
So it's a
It
highly,
has a geekish hue about it.
It's
All right,
it's a
awesome.
highly produced presentation. You have a Q&A. It's really like a dinner. Get dinner, have dinner, and then watch the movie, see the presentation, hang out
$5.
with Craig afterwards. $5.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on, it's a movie
You're
for
not
$5.
charging enough,
Come
Craig.
on.
Why?
We
what's
just
the
wanted
deal?
to, I know, but we just wanted to have fun. It's something that Crosstown Arts really wanted
Again,
to do.
it's not about the money; it's about the love of the game.
There you go.
That's true. But Craig, man, it's great. I hope we'll get you on Geek Tank more often, and we hope we'll see you in November at the convention. So,
Always. Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's cool. And folks, we really invite you. What's your Instagram address?
I've always been My Brew Tube.
Oh, well, no wonder I can't find it. My Brew Tube.
Yes, MYBREWTUBE.
All right, well, check out Craig there. So, but Craig, it's great having you, and we'll see you next Friday night. And
That'll be great.
between now and then, I'm going to see if I can twist some information out of him and unpry the secret.
It's a
But
secret, Joe. It's
yeah.
a secret.
but
I need to find out who's going to interview.
I just see him acting like Tom Haverford trying to figure out who's trying to buy his business.
yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, yeah, get out there, watch Hustle and Flow, check out all of his filmography. It's very interesting, and we know you'll love it. But guys, it's time to get out of here. I mean, the time waits for no man, right, Max? So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Allan Gilbreth.
I'm Maximilian it.
I'm Craig Brewer.
And I am Brandon Olmstead, reminding you to take Craig's advice. Go find your voice.
Geek Tank Radio, News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. Today, we're joining you from the backyard barbecue at the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's house.
Dude.
Little change of pace here. The
This is
tables
the
have
most-
turned.
This is just the most relaxing, show we've done.
Yeah, I mean,
Ever.
Yeah, good food.
Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do the bad pun.
It's interesting.
Would
Okay.
everybody like some more?
Oh, okay, yeah,
Oh.
very good. I was
Had
intrigued.
I think you owe Joe an apology for stepping on his gimmick.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the protein dishes over there.
I just kind of like, everything's, cooked by an unlicensed,
One guy looks
radioactive
like
power
a
pack.
one thing over there looks like the shape of a Ghostbuster. But anyway,
Yeah,
let's
well,
move
you know.
along. Welcome to Geek Tank Radio, everybody.
Just went to a really dark place, guys.
Yeah, got ugly. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friend.
Because I ate its leg.
No.
All right, yeah, look, I think we really do need to move along. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And guys, interesting discussion. So last week we were over there at the the Bartlett Animal Services
Yes.
their rave event.
Yes.
The
Rabies
rabies
and
and vaccination extravaganza.
I wonder if they chose that name on purpose because to me it was terrible branding until you find out you're going to a rave.
I
You're
don't,
like, oh, okay,
I don't know when
this
you
is
said
cool.
when you said rave the other day. Our friendly neighborhood dog catcher looked at you like, huh.
Yeah,
So I'm guessing T-shirts next year.
Jay the dog
Jay
catcher.
the dog catcher.
It's fun.
We voted. He's in.
Jay's a part of the crew. He's awesome. And so the interesting thing is I'm looking at our schedule, you guys. It looks like we're going to be on the road quite a bit over the next month. We may turn up at the Italian festival or we've got
believe
other
we
things
are.
that we haven't confirmed yet, but we're going to
If
be
your
doing a lot more of
bathroom
these
gets
remotes.
clogged, it might have been Joe.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fun doing those remotes, and we're going to be on the road. Now, we're not going to be broadcasting from this, but I do want to give a shout out. We had a really great interview on our recent show with Craig Brewer.
Yes.
Right. It's hard to pigeonhole him because he's a writer, producer, director, filmmaker, independent filmmaker, company man, right? He works for these. He works for the big studios as well as his own little, his own projects.
Right.
He has achieved that level where he can kind of do his own thing.
Yeah, it's great because he's here in Memphis. I mean, he's not always here. Sometimes when he's working, he's out,
He's in LA.
California.
He's in Memphis, but
yeah.
comes home for the food.
This is home.
Yeah, and he's great. And so he's got an event coming up. It's going to be the 27th. Yeah, let me have the date right. Friday the 27th at the Crosstown Theatre, which is that big, giant. We didn't even get into the discussion of what an interesting place the Crosstown Concourse is.
And I'm not trying to be mercenary about it. That's because the Crosstown's not paying me.
Well, not yet, but we should play.
We're working
nice.
on it.
But anyway, the theater is awesome, and it's a perfect night. You just go. It opens at 7:30, and it sounds like Craig's got a really interesting approach. It's called a secret screening. You go there and you don't know what movie he's going to screen.
Correct.
And it's only $5.
$5, but it's a highly produced event. He'll bring in, basically, he might bring somebody out from like the University of Memphis. Maybe he brings out a specialist in Irish studies or something, and they start discussing things, and through the discussion, you get a clue as to what movie's coming up. So it's a really interesting approach, and it's very well produced. There's music, and then afterwards, you can hang out with him and everybody else. He's a very accessible guy. I mean,
true.
He's all about giving back to Memphis and connecting with. He's authentic. Let's just put it that way.
Well,
he hasn't gone Hollywood and turned into a phony. He's still very
Well,
grounded.
let's face it. We're a lot of source material.
Well,
Well, that's true. He's probably sitting here taking mental notes, like, okay, I
He's
just
going,
gotta.
man, where do you see the character I'm going to kill in this next movie? I got this guy,
Yeah.
I needed a nerd. Let's amalgamate these three.
That's a good point. Yeah, we might wind up in a story down the road. So.
Could be.
Yeah, so we'll be there. That's going to be a lot of fun. But Brandon, last week on the this is going to be one of our mailbag discussions. I'm not sure when we're going to. I guess we're going to jump in this soon. But we had a mailbag come in that you said let's hold this over
Well,
because it needs to really. It could be something that we unpack.
I
quite a
really
bit.
felt that it could be a full discussion. And let's just be honest, I was severely distracted last week. There were puppies everywhere.
And you didn't go home with any. That was the big surprise.
No. I love dogs, but my dog is animal aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
So it would be rude to bring any of the
It'd be
guys
a turf
in.
war.
And it was a really great benefit anyway. You were able to get your vaccinations, your microchipping for a phenomenal discount.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were doing 50% adoptions.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it was kind of a
everybody
no-brainer.
was in there with
People
their
were-
dogs,
yeah.
and I couldn't really get into a full-on comic book discussion when I'm going every 5 minutes. Oh, look at the puppy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, the Great Dane definitely wanted to be your lap dog.
Well, I like the fact he wanted to do his own paperwork.
Well, that was the Husky.
Was it? No,
That was a
Mastiff.
Malamute. No,
Was
that
it
was
the Malamute?
No,
It doesn't matter. There were a
What's the
ton
other
of
one?
dogs.
Starts with an M. Giant dog.
The Mastiff.
The Mastiff, right.
Yeah.
He just walked over. Literally walked over to the table, stood up, and was like, give me a pencil.
Yeah, it was just, let's just say that between that and the canine,
Watching the canine unit work.
It was a great weekend, but we did get a mailbag that I feel we need to discuss. I think it'll be a really good conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why we're going to jump into it right now.
Okay.
Ooh, the mail's here. That means we get to see our old friend, Mailbox.
Okay. I like that music, though.
I do. I
It's
was
so
a little,
Aquabats.
I was
Wow.
a little on the fence to begin with, but I find myself kind of jamming to it.
Oh, this is great.
Anyway.
What is it, 70s game show music or something? I don't know what it is, but
That's some serious.
Max is a genius behind the glass.
okay. So
Anyway.
this is an interesting, and I think we even teased it. So
Yeah.
let's
So,
rehearse this one. Yeah.
Dear GTR, I'm not always a fan of Marvel and DC's interconnectivity. For example, I think the X-Men would be more interesting if they existed in a universe of their own. A universe where pretty much all superpowers came from mutation. There are several DC characters I also feel the same way about. What is your opinion about interconnectivity in comics? And I find this to be a great question because I don't like to do the whole back in my day because I don't want to step on Allan's gimmick.
Yeah, that's his thing. So,
But back
yeah.
in my day, when I was a
Right.
huge X-Men fan, other than the big once-a-year crossover you had, the X-Men pretty much did do their own thing. And what was going on in the mutant, communities didn't reflect with what was going on in Fantastic Four or the Avengers or Spider-Man or Daredevil. Everybody other than the big crossover got to do their own thing. But nowadays, comics, it's like if Wolverine sneezes blue goo in his book,
Yeah.
the Punisher references it in his book as if it's a major plot point. So I can get behind this.
And I feel like we should include movies. I mean, obviously, how do we just ignore it? So comics and film.
Yeah.
Let's just say the MCU, the DCU, and then this is a whole. This one is
If you bring in the film and TV and other media, then you really have to get down and dirty because Marvel wants to try to put this synergy into their movies where if you didn't see, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever,
Right.
which should be coming out later this year, then Quantumania with Ant-Man and Wasp isn't going to make sense to you. And I feel that sometimes that really takes away because sometimes you just want to watch
yeah.
the Black Panther characters or the Ant-Man and Wasp characters, and you don't need it to be connected to everything.
Well, look, here's my premise for this. Let me ask you guys this. So when I hear this, I definitely sympathize because in my dream world there would be Batman and that's it. There's no other superhero. There's no Superman or Green Lantern or anybody. He is a real street level, no superpowered crime noir figure fighting crime with no Robin. I'm sorry. I know that's a dream. It's never going to happen. However, in my mental landscape, that's what's existing. But when you have interconnectivity like you have the X-Men and you have all of the other Marvel superheroes, I feel like that universe, there's a set of, what do you call them, guidelines, or there's a Bible for that. There's that universe's Bible. And I feel like when you have all that interconnectivity, maybe it limits you a little bit. Like if superpowers only came from mutation and that's the fundamental basis of where it comes from, that's a whole different thing than getting your superpowers by getting, bitten by a spider or getting a radioactive thing. It changes the mentality of the superhero, I think.
True.
So,
I want to step over into the Image comic label right now.
okay.
Spawn does not exist within The Walking Dead. Both of these are Image comics.
Good point. There you go. Yeah.
I believe that Saga and Chew are also from Image. There is no guy chewing up corpses from Saga to tell you the story. That's in its own book. I didn't think of that. That's one of the great
Images,
things I love about Image comics or the IDW licensed comics. When IDW does a crossover amongst their various titles, it's because of an interdimensional shift.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like recently. Well, I say recently, but it was like probably 2018, 2019. They did a full-on Ghostbusters crossover that had characters from all the different Ghostbusters universe. the cartoon, the real Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters Extreme, the 2016 Answer the Call crew that I know a lot of people give me grief for actually enjoying that movie, but it's true, I do. But they used them in the comics in a way where everybody kind of intermingled and, it flowed, but they were all from different alternate dimensions.
When did the idea of interconnectivity even show up? Was that a Stan Lee thing? Was that a whole thing of, okay, look, we want to sell comics, so let's throw Thor let's have him do a cameo over here in the Spider-Man comic? And is that where it came from? Because
back in the old days, and I mean, this is pure speculation because I was not in any of their brains, and I still consider myself to be too young to know exactly what they were thinking. But yeah, you would have somebody like Daredevil show up in Spider-Man because it's like, hey, we've got a story here that will fit the two characters, and it might go an issue of Spider-Man and issue of Daredevil, maybe alternating weekly across a month, and then be done.
Right.
And then you would have your big summer crossovers like Secret Wars, which was its own book. It was a 12-issue, I believe it was a 12-issue maxi series where all the Marvel characters fought against the Beyonder in a contest of champions kind of, format, but they weren't on 616, they weren't on their Earth. And then, of course, when they did Secret Wars 2, that was the Beyonder coming to Earth 616 and, kind of doing his whole thing. But it was always contained in those. Every once in a while, you'd have a offshoot where it's like maybe the issue of Spider-Man that ran that month had all to do with him getting the black suit because he got the symbiote suit during Secret Wars.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it didn't really affect what was going on in the major storyline running through Spider-Man at that time.
Huh.
Now, like you said, the comics try to be like the movies. Right now in Marvel, we're leading up to, I think it's called Day of Judgment, which is a big crossover between the X-Men, the Avengers, and the Eternals. Mm-hmm. And it's every book. There's nothing that doesn't get touched by this. And so if you are only a fan of Daredevil or, Spider-Man, you're going to have to deal with all this stuff, even though it's not really something that would normally run through your comics.
I don't know. What do you guys feel about I'm of two minds. I guess looking back at the MCU, I don't like the notion that you have to see 22 movies to get the. Now, at the same time, you probably don't have to see all of those movies, but to get the full story, you kind of do.
Here's the thing with that, though, Joe, is like early on, you didn't have to see it. It's like
you could just watch Captain America.
You could watch Captain America, and like, oh, Captain America's going to be in Avengers. And, but these movies, they had the characters were well developed enough that you were like, okay, I understand what's going on here. I know these characters. It's awesome. But if that's not to say that people who want to absorb all of it aren't also in the right. This is really a personal, your personal taste, your personal, agenda when it comes to the MCU. But if you didn't get Disney Plus and you didn't watch WandaVision and you went into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, your main thought is, why is Wanda being such a,
Yeah, what's her problem?
Why is she being such a pain?
It's like the last time we saw her was her talking to Clint in Endgame about how we, honor those that have fallen. She misses Vision, he misses Nat, but they're going to get through this. And then you see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and you didn't see where Wanda basically had the grief mental breakdown that a lot of people do in the real world. And especially when you find out that in WandaVision, not only did she lose her husband again, but she lost her children.
Yeah. Yep. She didn't seem all that hung up on finding Vision, though, did she?
Well, that's because. But if you remember correctly,
Vision.
You remember correctly, with the way that everything ended, they know Vision's alive.
We're gonna see him again. We know that.
Yeah. I mean, we know he's out there.
Yeah.
But the thing that really she built that life in, Westview on was the kids.
Craig Brewer said something when we were talking to him. I think we touched a little bit on DC versus Marvel in the sense of DC being more open to maybe like the Joker. That's a perfect movie.
Right.
That's a one-off kind of on its own. I mean, it's obviously in the Batman thing, but it's you didn't have to see any other movies to get the handle on that.
And there's plenty of people who have their various different interpretations of how that movie went. There are some people who see it as the origin of the Joker that we would see in the DC universe, but there's also people who see a man who is acting out his delusions via a character that we all would recognize.
Yeah.
All right, so that's where I'm going to argue with Joe slightly in the fact that, well, you didn't have to see other movies. Well, if you hadn't seen other DC movies, then that movie made no sense and held no interest for you. So you, not a specific movie, but you had to know.
You did have to have
You
knowledge.
had to have a Batman background to want to watch that movie.
Yeah, I guess it's
So,
out in the zeitgeist. Everybody knows who Batman is. Everybody knows who the Joker,
really
even if they don't watch the
That's the thing, though.
movies or
It's
read
like
the
we
comics.
really do take it for granted because of how popular Batman is, how popular the Joker is, how popular Spider-Man is. We do take for granted that all these individuals in the world, we think everybody knows them, but that's not necessarily true.
I don't know. I think I like images.
Just because someone knows of Star Wars doesn't mean they know anything about Star Wars.
I like that Image Comics approach. I didn't think about that, Brandon, but it sounds like it's a mix and match. Some characters exist in a same universe, and some are just kind of on their own.
Well, and keep in mind, this all goes back to marketing.
Well, of course, they're trying to sell.
You got to
movie
go back.
tickets and comics, so,
let's set the Wayback Machine and let's figure out. Is they're sitting around going, all right, well, Brandon the Destroyer is pretty popular, and Joe the Builder is pretty popular. So what if we got Joe and Brandon together because, Allan's going to build a death laser and take out everybody in Metropolis. Mm-hmm. And they went, well, that way we can cross over the two fandoms and hopefully get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And sadly, that worked once or twice.
Yeah.
And then, of course, now the rule of sequels has to apply because it can't be just as good.
It has to be bigger.
It has to be bigger, better, higher body count, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think.
Then you throw in both companies. Because
Right.
then you wind up with, DC versus Marvel, Marvel versus DC, because you will perpetually have the petulant nerd argument. Who is faster, bigger, badder, stronger? Who would win in a fight between Mamie Eisenhower and, Catwoman? That kind of stuff.
And in those wonderful, rare occasions where we get, like the Marvel versus DC crossover, the All Access crossovers, the Amalgam Universe, or in tribute to the late George Perez, JLA Avengers.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I feel like anytime there's any gimmick in there, like even I'll be honest, Endgame and Infinity Wars had a few gimmicks in there, but it still was enough emotional impact where it was fun. But the minute a story is introduced and I'm like, okay, this is either about selling toys or it's about setting up the next thing or whatever. I just don't like things under the story should be at the top.
When we get back from our break, I want to touch on the idea of event fatigue.
Bingo, boom. It's can I touch on that real quick? I watched.
I figured we'd do it when we get back.
Yeah, no, but here's this is going into the
be
break.
Strong.
I watched one of my favorite movies. It's called The Englishman Who Went Up a Hill and Came Down a Mountain.
Right.
Awesome movie. It takes place. It's the simplest premise in the world.
Right.
These guys. I won't even spoil it for you if you haven't watched it. I want a superhero movie like that.
Okay.
I want one where it's that simple. It's that straightforward. It's one event. They come and go. It takes a course in maybe 3 days or something, and it's over. I'm event fatigue. Exactly, Brandon. I'm kind of I'm ready for a little variety. That's why the multiverse is just not doing it for me yet. I hate to say it, man.
What happens is just the more layers you put into this, the more story service you have to do, and a less original story you're going to get.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, and this is why you should totally get in on the multiverse stuff, Joe, is because the multiverse can give you that world where Batman never had a Robin.
Oh, okay. All All right, you might have me
Okay.
there, Brandon.
Yeah.
Okay, Brandon, just
All right,
he
his
hooked
ears
me.
just went up. His tail's
Hey,
wagging.
enough of that. Okay, how about a universe where that saying goes away?
That'll
into
never
the black
happen.
hole. You're listening to Geek Tank Radio here on News Talk 98.9 The Roar, Memphis. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Geek Tank Radio. News Talk 98.9, The Roar of Memphis.
You know, for a bunch of retreating cowards, they sound like they're in the heat of battle. It sounds pretty good. I don't know.
Sometimes you
clanks.
get loudest when you get to go home.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, welcome back to Geek Tank Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, we're talking about, I guess, the interconnectivity of DC and Marvel, both in their comics and their movies. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Or maybe just, then you brought in a variable, Brandon. Image Comics sort of does a variety of both, which I think that's the approach. Because, we just watched Moon Knight. That just wrapped up. And you guys are talking about all the characters they can bring in. And just based on the premise I saw, I'm like, I don't want Moon Knight with anybody. I feel like the minute you bring him in, you're going to undercut what we've learned about Moon. I don't know. Some of them I'm happy to see them in their own universe.
One of my favorite interactions is actually between Mark Spector and Frank Castle. And Frank asked him, "Are you still crazy?" And Mark says, yeah.
Well, how does that work? Is it Mark or is it Moon Knight?
No, they know him as Mark. He's in the Moon Knight gear, but they know him as Mark.
Well, I guess in theory he could be dressing up as Moon Knight with no super. I don't know. See, the minute you bring it in, it sounds like
here's the thing. You're connecting it too much with what happened in the show right now.
Okay.
Which again, it's like it. I would love to see Jay Barenthal and Oscar Isaac reenact that scene, because eventually Mark's going to find out that Jake didn't give up the mantle.
True.
I don't wait. You lost me. Give up the mantle.
Mark relinquished the mantle.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen relinquished the mantle.
Mm-hmm.
Jake did not relinquish the mantle. The body is still Khonshu's avatar.
Okay. Gosh, sorry, folks. We didn't give a spoiler warning, but I guess
I would hope that if you had any intention of watching Moon Knight, seeing as how several episodes back we spoiled Moon Knight.
Yeah. Well, if that made any sense, you already watched it. If it didn't make any sense, it won't make any difference.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I guess we better be careful. But I don't know.
No. It's
too
weeks,
late to
weeks
be
removed
careful.
at this point.
But
We're talking comic books. So no matter what happened, who died, where they died, how they died,
All it takes is
somebody
a sneeze
can
and it
bring them back.
changes.
Somebody can change them. You used to be a villain, now you're a hero. Oh wait, we sold more books as you were the villain. You'll go back to being a villain. You got, welcome to comic book, guys.
I hate this. This is that part where I go, man, I wish Magneto had sold more as a villain. I'm tired of Magneto being a hero.
I think, to be honest, one of the things I gravitated towards when Vertigo comics came out was, as far as I saw one in the Sandman comics. I saw a very small couple of references to, like, I don't know, the Justice League or Martian Manhunter or something. But for the most part, these were just stories, and they could take place anywhere in time or space or anything. But
what
and
happens?
I feel like
what happens with the Endless is eventually you had enough of them that were selling their own books that you might as well have been reading the Justice League.
Yeah. Well, I guess
Just
what I'm wondering
Spooky
is,
League.
technically, Sandman does take place in the DC universe, right? But it's just I guess it's to the degree that they showcase it. Maybe that's my.
I think there's just because the characters share the same universe or anything like that. I like the idea of characters not running into each other just because they're in that same universe. I don't need Spider-Man swinging by in the background while the Punisher's mowing someone down.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Because growing up, I read Marvel comics. That was my thing. I would read Spider-Man, Thor, and all those. And I remember specifically, and a lot of Stan Lee comics, it would say, "Hey, why is Thor over there flying past?" Well, fine. And then there's a little thing, like a handwritten thing. It says, "Find out in issue 74 of Thor's blah blah blah." And it's like, obviously it's just a commercial.
A lot
of
those background appearances of other characters were so you were going, man, what is Thor doing in Hell's Kitchen? Better check out Daredevil. I also like the fact that back in the day when they would throw that character on the cover and it's to just straight up go, yep, Thor, what business does Thor have in whatever. It was a simpler time. We had our crossovers, we had our guest stars, but usually the cover kind of told you why they were there, and half the time they weren't even there for the whole time.
Oh no!
But
they
then,
were there to sell comics. So
later on, you'd get something where it's like you've got a character that's super popular, like Wolverine. Wolverine was showing up everywhere. There's a great issue of Ghost Rider that guest stars Wolverine and the Beast, Hank McCoy, and the cover of that issue though it's Danny Ketch, Ghost Rider, and Logan basically tearing into each other. Never happens in the comic.
Yeah.
But back in the day when we were talking about with the others, if there was a thing on the cover, that scene happened somewhere in the comic.
Huh. Now that I'm thinking of it, and here you go, Alan. Here's your food reference. I'm bringing up a food reference on Geek Tank.
You've done that a couple of times recently.
Surprisingly. And well, actually, Brandon, you're a foodie too. So here. How about think of it this way? Every character in DC Universe or Marvel is an ingredient.
It's an ingredient.
One might be a protein, one might be a spice, one might be a vegetable or something. Depending on how you mix and match it, it could be delicious. Yeah. However, you don't just throw everything into the pot because at that point, it's what are you even eating?
Right.
So I feel like maybe that's the problem. I've seen some team ups that are great. Yeah. That they really work.
There are characters that I always felt had great interaction are actually Ultimate Wolverine and Ultimate Peter Parker Spider-Man.
What's the difference? To be honest, I don't know that.
All right. So the Ultimate Universe was somebody's marketing attempt to give you full access, easy access to characters at the beginning, so you weren't bogged down with continuity. Not that Marvel really has ever paid attention to continuity.
Yeah, what's that word?
Yeah. I mean, there's characters whose powers change depending on what issue they're in.
Or they're a villain one episode. And
right. So they were trying to give you a ground level introduction. And these, though you want that for, your younger readers, but then these comics were definitely not for younger readers.
Oh, gotcha.
The X-Men comics were gory as all get out. It took 3 issues to kill off Uncle Ben in Spider-Man, but they still had Uncle Ben laying in a pool of blood.
Yeah.
It was...
let's face it. How many times can we kill Ben?
Apparently one more every time. Anytime.
It's just really, can we stop shooting Ben?
It's like really? I'm kind of glad they went the other direction with the Tom Holland Spider-Man. So
he's already dead.
It's all
Let's
good.
Move on.
Well, no, the whole great power, great responsibility thing only comes about when in this latest movie, which we've never seen an Uncle Ben in this.
Right.
So if you haven't seen No Way Home, I suggest seeing it because Tom Holland's Peter Parker finally got his great power comes great responsibility moment, and that's the one thing that is the one thing that's been missing from his series.
Yeah.
The basis of Spider-Man has not been mentioned once in those 3 movies.
Yeah.
Until that 3rd movie.
Is it a spoiler to say Uncle Ben died? I mean, I guess I'm glad Max
Uncle
here on
Ben
top
died.
Of it, but
just any excuse to press the button.
He's been wanting to use that button all day.
I've maintained for years he's just in the witness protection program and he runs a rice company.
Okay.
All right, but I do want to jump back over to the interconnectivity thing and what I said before we went to break about the multiverse.
Oh right, yeah, okay, because you kind of got me interested by saying that.
There's a book that Grant Morrison did called Multiversity.
Yeah.
And there's a source book to that tells you about all these different Earths in the in the DC multiverse.
Right.
They're not all named because there's a ton. But it's like you could find that universe where Batman is the only hero. And it's all street level, and he never met Dick Grayson, and Alfred was not really the positive role model that we kind of think of him as, and that
I like Alfred.
That Batman is really more of a darker character. He's less a hero and more a full on vigilante. But it's definitely a kind of a crime story. I mean, have you ever read the Batman Earth 1 books?
Yeah, I've read that. Well, I was going to say because Alfred's like he's like a
Alfred's
CIA
like
guy.
He's like a Renaissance man. You know, it's like he's been involved in everything.
Right. I guess I like those. I guess it just has to be set up the right way, because then if you just throw it out there where you can do anything, I feel like there has to still be a structure, and there has to be otherwise, because I know like in the Elseworld stories where, like, for example, they had one where Clark Kent, or I should say Kal-El, lands in Russia instead.
Right,
and
Red
that's
Sun.
a great one, Red Sun and everything. And but there's still the same principle. He gets his powers from the sun, and so. Another
really good one is Superman: The Dark Side, where he lands on Apokolips instead of Earth.
Right. Yeah.
And he's raised by Darkseid. We have in Darkest Night, which in that Elseworlds, Bruce Wayne is the one who gets the Green Lantern ring.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I've got that one. I've got quite a few. Yeah, there's one where Clark Kent gets picked up by the Thomas and Martha Wayne, and he becomes Batman.
Yeah.
So
And before we get back to the interconnectivity of comics, I want to ask: have you ever read The Nail?
I don't know. That one,
JLA The Nail. It's a 3-issue, Elseworlds series. Because of getting a nail in their tire, the Kents never find Clark.
Oh, now that's interesting. Don't give me the spoiler on this one, because
that's literally the whole premise of the book, of the series, and I definitely think you should read that, because I mean, come on, For Want of a Nail.
You just gave me
as a carpenter, I think that should definitely strike a chord there.
Tie them together.
I love that saying. But Brandon, you just made me we had a point of revelation when we were talking to Craig Brewer before. He said he had the point of revelation when bugs splattered on his windshield.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for that experience, we may not have had the second Footloose movie. Right. Okay. You just gave me a bit of revelation. I think the whole ingredient with this is not so much the interconnectivity. It's not so much whatever Marvel or DC is doing at any given moment. I think it's our attitude, because honestly, I don't always like having Robin in a story or something. Well, you know what? I'll read the stories that have Batman in it, or I can, or it's the way that I. Maybe I shouldn't just take things so serious. Maybe I should say, you know what? This particular Wolverine story was really cool. I'm going to enjoy it for what it was, and I'm not going to get hung up on what this is going to do to the future of, Marvel or whatever. And I think it's just, maybe there's just maybe before social media was around, this would have been a lot more enjoyable. I think comics were more fun before we had social media.
As someone who
because now
out
I feel like it's
I'm going to say, as someone who hung out a lot in comic shops before social media was really a thing, I completely disagree with you.
Okay.
The only thing that social media did was it put those arguments
in a
closer
bigger,
in a bigger venue.
Well,
because
all right. Well, it's my own I can't help what other people think. I can only help what I think.
I think your storylines were better when it was more about story and less about production.
Right.
Because we had the great investment boom of the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Where
the speculators kind of killed everything.
Let's face it, Wall Street came knocking at the comic book door, and you got Wall Street product.
Yeah.
You got some really pretty covers. You got a lot of really flashy printed stuff. You got a lot of crossovers and big books that are, you got a lot of 55-cent comics that are now worth 65 whole cents.
And what's that other thing? You got story by committee. You got all the suits saying, well, you need to shoehorn in this, and this, because we're trying to sell this particular whatever.
And having written in a shared universe, let me tell you about writing in a shared universe. Writing in a shared universe is a pain.
I think it would be
because you have to remember that Twiggies are always blue, except for in May where they turn pink. And by the way, your story is going to happen on June 1st. So you're like, all these.
It inhibits creativity.
As I say, story service, where you have got to meet all of these certain details before you can even get started trying to tell your version of this story.
Yeah. No, maybe things are just too big.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have
Well,
the Marvel Cinematic Universe when we were growing up, or the it's a
will
juggernaut, and they're in service to that.
We will
now.
always go back to it was a simpler time, and to actually compare a comic book movie to a comic book series from the 60s or 70s is impossible.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same animal.
No.
It's the same character. It's the same idea. It's the same selling point, but it is not the same product.
And it affects every form of media these characters are in. I'm going to jump back to the first season of the cartoon Static Shock.
Okay.
Now, Static is a character created in the Milestone universe. He was co-opted along with a lot of other Milestone characters to show up in DC Comics. He's hung out with the Young Justice and the Teen Titans and everything else. During the first season of his cartoon, though, the DC characters he knew of them the same way we did. He knew of them as comic book characters. And
that's interesting.
There's an episode where he has to get a job at a fast food place, and his buddy's like, "Hey, even Clark Kent has a day job."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When they rebooted worked the show for season 2 and introduced the DC universe in as actual characters and not as comic book characters that he knew, they went back and in that first episode they pulled that out because Static knows who Superman is, but he doesn't know that Clark Kent is Superman.
Yeah, there you go.
And
little things to trip you up. Yeah.
And that interconnectivity, like I said, with limits, can be a wonderful thing. But one of the worst things about interconnectivity is that now everything, and I hit on this before we went to break earlier, everything has to be an event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
I think
it's one of the reasons I stopped collecting comics as hardcore as I did. I'm a casual reader now, and it's mainly just to keep up with what's happening with characters I grew up with, characters I loved. And I'm not a big fan of a lot of the stuff that they do with them now, but I know that these comics aren't being written for 44-year-old Brandon or 10-year-old Brandon. They're now being written by for 40-year-old guy who thinks that comics needed to grow up with him because they priced younger kids out of them years ago. And that guy is now starting to realize he can't share his love of comics with his kids because comics have grown to this point that they're not accessible for his kids anymore.
Yeah. I guess one comfort thing, though, is, it's easy to say, oh, well, comics and, the comics industry is in trouble or it's over or the MCU is played out and whatever. It always gets refreshed because every generation, if you look at a 1940s Batman comic versus a comic from the 60s or the 50s, every 10 years or so it gets reinvented. So
comics
panic,
are
everybody.
Comics are always going to exist in one form or another.
Right.
I just, at this point, you've got guys who are keeping the industry going strictly out of their own obsessive compulsive disorders and their own need to collect.
Yeah.
Rather than because they're enjoying the story. It's like I know so many people who still buy their comics every each issue every time it comes out because what are they going to do? They've already put so much money into it. They've got to keep going and they aren't enjoying it.
Oh, we've gone down that road. I gave up once it stopped being fun. Well, I should say once I had kids, I couldn't afford it, so I had a built-in excuse.
Right.
But
I mean,
yeah.
But that was the thing. I've got so many friends who. We've talked about Moon Knight a lot. A friend of mine who just did not like Moon Knight at all. And my biggest question to him was, after 2 episodes of realizing you didn't like it at all, why'd you keep watching?
Oh.
Because as long as that streaming, click goes into the algorithm, as long as that's there, they're going to see that as a sign that that's what you want more of.
Somebody watched it. So,
yeah.
Huh. I don't know, man. It's an interesting discussion. We hope you'll weigh in and give us your thoughts. I mean, it makes me realize there's just so much content on there, and honestly, it's making me think I kind of want to go look at some fan fiction or something. So get a different take, fan made.
Well, keep in mind every new artist out there was fanfic.
Yeah, I mean that's how they started.
They drew these characters before they were paid to draw these characters. They were imagining storylines long before they were allowed to draw the storyline. So,
and you bringing that up, actually, there's one thing I want to hit on before we do leave.
Yeah.
And I'm so tired of this. And this may be me just being the grumpy old man that I am, and it's shining through. I am so sick and tired of any time I read an article with someone who's coming onto a comic who is who's going to be writing this storyline going,
Right.
I was never a fan of this character growing up, but I'd like to put my own spin on it.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't know the character, step away.
Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves, too. It's like, well,
I mean, I know that there's plenty
why
of people.
would you take this job?
There's plenty of.
Why would you take
well, they're
this job?
it's almost like they're hijacking the character. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, this is a vehicle to tell what I want to see.
And I wanna
And
read
without
somebody
doing the
that goes,
heavy
I
lifting.
like the character, but I always thought it would be
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah. Marvel is abysmally bad at this.
Yeah.
Is like you come in and you kill off Tony Stark. Why'd you come in to write Iron Man just to kill off Tony Stark?
Yeah.
Nobody has ever been more popular than Tony Stark in that armor.
Or
Yeah.
will be.
Or will be. You
Create your own
you
character.
always have to
Yeah.
bring him back. Well,
Yeah.
the thing is like, I'm gonna pick on Riri Williams for a minute.
Yeah.
Ironheart, who is an amazing character. She could have been introduced as a protege of his. She could have gotten her own armor, do her own thing. It'd be awesome. Instead, they kill off Tony. They introduce Riri Williams out of just like left field. Don't give any kind of character development for this character. Later on, you get to learn about her, and she's awesome. But the person who's actually Iron Man at the time is Victor Von Doom.
Yeah.
Which makes you wonder why.
Right. Yeah.
Why would you take such an interesting character and go that way with him?
And Marvel's also really bad about this is that when you complain about what they've done with a character, it's like we're watching the MCU. Tony Stark's this major player. Why'd you get rid of Tony Stark? Then the fact that you want him back, they bring him back, but they basically tell you you're wrong for the love you have for this character because it tears down the other characters. Riri Williams, Ironheart is still rolling hard. She's getting her own series, and it's going to be awesome. You didn't have to kill off Carol Danvers to bring in a new Miss Marvel. You just promoted her to Captain Marvel.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
That's two different ways you can go about it. I love the way that Captain Marvel did it. I hated the way that that Iron Man handled it. I still got really cool new characters out of both of them, but.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, if you've got strong opinions about any of this, and if you just want to get in on we got a whole show out of this one, out of our mailbag, get in touch with us. You can leave a voice message or a text. And,
I am giving free passes to the person who sent this in.
Oh, yeah,
They're
absolutely.
getting 2 3-day passes to the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention. This was a whole show.
Get in touch with us at 901-683-0989. And just a quick reminder, the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention, we changed the dates. It's a week later. No, that's not the end of the world, folks, but because of scheduling issues, we had to change it. So it's November 18th through 20th. You can learn more at memphiscfc.com. Guys, it's time to hit the road.
Yeah.
So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Allan Gilbreth.
I'm Maximilian.
And I'm Brandon Olmsted reminding you, contact us. We will talk about it.